everyone, welcome back to part 2. In this segment, we're going to continue finishing up building the armatures for our paper mache bats that we started in the first part of this tutorial. We're going to go ahead, strip mache, do some other things with these armatures, create the cloth wings for the other bat so that there are 2 variations, cardboard wings and then cloth wings. So let's get started. Alright, first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to get these wings strip mached so that I can set those aside to dry. Once my armature, my bat armature is strip mached and the wings are strip mached and dry, then I can go in and attach them to the back. But first step, I'm going to go ahead and strip mache these wings. I have several bunches of newspaper here cut in various sizes. And then I have my paper mache paste. My paper mache paste is very simple. It's just a mixture of flour and water to a pancake batter consistency. If you have a different recipe for your paste that you've been using and you like that, go ahead and use it. Don't fix what isn't broken. I always say that. But I'm going to go ahead and prop this wing up on, this is a plastic coffee can, so that I have some support while I'm strip macheing, and I'm going to get going on this. This is very mundane strip macheing. What I normally do when I'm not filming a tutorial, I'll put some music on or a movie that I've seen probably a million times and put that on in the background so that I have something to focus on other than this mundane process of strip macheing, because it is very mundane. So I'm probably going to do, I'd say, at least 2 to 3 layers of strip mache on these wings. That should be good enough. That should make them nice and sturdy so that we can, after they dry and we attach them to the body of the bat, we can apply our paper mache clay over. So I have my first layer of strip mache on one of my wings. I paid particular amount of attention in making sure that the edges were covered. And because this is quite soggy, I'm not going to add any more paste to these strips. I'm just going to take a dry piece of newspaper strip, and my second layer, I'm just going to go ahead and apply to the wet layer. And so that way it's not so soggy, and it should dry pretty solid enough to apply our, because it's not going to be a very thick layer of clay that we're going to apply to sculpt out these wings. So it will be structurally sound enough after this dries so that we could go ahead and do that, those fine details and putting on that clay without worrying about it collapsing on us. Alright, my wings are done. I ended up putting on 2 layers of newspaper strips. That should do it. I'm going to, the way that I'm going to allow these to dry is by setting them not this way, because it will droop and sag a little bit, even though we have our little cardboard brace. But I'm going to set them this way so that when it does sag, it'll help retain that curve in these wings a bit more. Because it's a nice sunny day outside, I'm going to take these outside, put them in the sun, and allow them to dry. Through the drying process, maybe in a couple of hours, I'll go up, I'll check on them, and if they're getting stiff enough, I might flip them over so that the other side can have direct sunlight on it. That's going to aid and hurry along the drying process. Now, if it's not a nice sunny day outside, I would suggest putting these in front of a fan to aid that drying process. These are it's not a whole lot of strip mache on these. They're not very big. So probably overnight, tomorrow morning, these will be good to go to apply the clay and move on from there. All right. So my wings are outside sitting in the sun drying. I'm going to move forward and I'm going to go ahead and strip mache both of my bats here. If you're only making one bat or one variation, then obviously you're only going to have one bat body to strip mache. Again, I have my paste and my different sizes of cut newspaper here. And I'm just going to go ahead and again, I have them propped up on a couple of plastic containers that will allow me to handle them easy and flip them. But I'm going to go ahead and I think I'm going to start on the backs of them and plow right through this. On these, I'm going to probably put at least 4 layers of strip mache on them. Just because I want these bodies to be very, very strong. Because we are going to be layering on more amounts of clay on the bodies and the face of these bats than the bat wings. So I'm just going to plow right through this, and you'll do the same. Pretty boring process. This is my least favorite part of paper mache is the strip mache, but it is a necessary one. So strip macheing around the head area where the head here is attached to the body. I don't want to bulk that up because I do want the body or the head to be a little bit more recessed. So I'm just taking some of my thinner strips with the paste soaked on there, and I'm just kind of going in there and scrunching it in. And then around the head area, I'm just kind of layering it in there. Alright, so I have both of my little bat body armatures strip mached. I would say that I put on probably 4 layers of strip mache on the body as well as the head. I only did maybe 2 layers of strip mache on the ears because I didn't want, these are thinner pieces of cardboard, I didn't want them to get too floppy. Once again, I'm going to turn them over because I do want to try to retain the shape of my ears, and the easiest way to do that is by gravity. I could tell I didn't do a very good job there. There's a piece of cardboard showing. It is extremely important that you spend time on the strip mache process of your armature. If you do not, your armature will not be structurally sound enough to hold the clay, the wet, heavy clay. You'll have a catastrophic failure. You ever watch the show, the reality TV show Forged in Fire, where they make the cool blades? The bladesmiths make the cool knives and swords and stuff. And then, poor guys, they spend so much time on that stuff, and then it just breaks or falls apart. It's such a tragedy. It always breaks my heart. I feel so bad for those people. But something like that can definitely happen. I mean, it could cause if your strip mache isn't good enough, when you start applying that clay onto that after the strip mache is dry, it can collapse. It can cause you a lot of heartache and a lot of problems. And trust me, it's happened to me quite often, and it's definitely something that you want to avoid. So I'm going to take these upstairs now into the sun, let them dry. Probably by tomorrow, I think these guys will be dry enough for me to carry on. We'll see. They do have more layers of strip mache than my wings, but I'm going to go ahead and sit them in the sun and carry on from there. All right, so we are about halfway through constructing our armatures for our paper mache bats. As you can see here, these are completely paper mache, strip mached over, and they're dry and hardened. And so are my wings. My wings are dry and hardened. So I'm going to move forward. First thing that I'm going to do is I have to make a small batch of clay. I do have tutorials on my channel on how to make paper mache clay using cellulose fiber insulation. There's 2 different ones on there, how to make a small batch, which is I'm going to do right now, and I'm not going to show you that on camera in this tutorial. But as a reference, you can go back and look at that on the channel. So that's what I'm going to do first, and then we'll move on from there. I don't know how far we're going to get as far as finishing the armature in this segment of the tutorial. I'm trying to keep these tutorials under 45 minutes long. They are very in-depth, so this might be a 3-part on just building the armature. We'll see. I'm going to carry on and move forward with constructing the armatures. Alright, first thing that I want to do is on the bat that I'm constructing with the cardboard wing variation, I want to get the inside of these wings clayed over to about where I'm going to eventually attach them. So what I'm doing here is I'm just kind of lining up my wings underneath my bat, positioning them in the way that I want them to be positioned. I'm thinking right about like that. I'm going to take my marker here and on the inside of the bat. So on the inside of each wing, I'm just making a mark. That's going to indicate to me where on the back of my bat these wings will be attached. So what I'm going to focus on first is claying over the inside portion of the wing up into where that line is. I don't want any clay on this because I'm going to attach them with hot glue to the back. That's what I'm going to do now. And our little thin flexible newspaper strips, or not newspaper strips, thin flexible cardboard strips that we use to hold our wing shape in place. We don't need that anymore. So I'm just going to cut that out of each wing. Just like that. So those are out of the way, and I could go ahead and start laying on my clay on the inside of these wings. Now to do that, obviously you're going to need some paper mache clay, which I've just made up a small batch. Well, I tell you, there's nothing like a fresh batch of clay. I love it. And then you're also going to need some paper mache paste to help smooth over your paper mache clay that you apply. And again, mine's just flour and water to a pancake-like consistency. You can use whatever paste recipe you've been using. And then I have a few different types of sculpting tools here that'll help me smooth it even more. This is just a plastic spoon. I find plastic spoons like this really do well, especially on areas where it's a rounded area. And then I have these little plastic sculpting tools here that I picked up at Michael's Arts and Crafts store. Comes in a set of 3, and I think there was like, I don't know, $6 or $7 for the set. So nothing fancy there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on applying a thin layer of clay only on the inside portion of these wings. Now the reason that I'm doing this prior to attaching these wings is because once they're attached, it's going to be really hard to maneuver these things and get into these areas with this thing attached. So I have found that it's much easier to create the wings as a separate element if you're using the cardboard wings. We will eventually get to the armature where we're going to use we will create cloth wings, but for now I'm going to focus on the cardboard wings. Alright, so starting on the inside, I'm going to go ahead and in this curved wing section here, I'm going to start just pressing in, laying in a thin amount of clay, enough thickness to cover the newspaper strips entirely. And as you can see, this is why it's much easier to sculpt these out in separate elements, because once they're on that bat body, it's much harder to get in there. Trust me, I've done it, and this is why I choose to do it this way now. Alright, now that I have my wing, the inside of my wing clayed in with a thin, even layer of my paper mache clay, I'm going to go in and smooth out the clay, especially underneath this curved area, as best I can using my paintbrush dipped in paper mache paste. And I'm just kind of pressing it in. I'm not really concerned about getting this curved part inside there completely smooth, because obviously it's not going to be shown. No one's going to really see that area, but I still want to go in and as best as I can smooth in that clay so that it's not all lumpy. I'm going to continue on and apply my paste, pressing and smoothing my clay over the entire inside of this wing. Okay, I've got that all smoothed in with my paper mache paste using the paintbrush. And for good measure, I'm going to go ahead and use my back of the concaved part of my plastic spoon and smooth it over even further. Again, not so much worrying about the inside bent part of this wing. No one's going to see it. I've got that smoothed over with using the back of a spoon here. And as you can see, some of my clay has overlapped here. Not a big deal, but I don't want it to just stay like that, because once this dries, that's going to be really hard. And I'm going to apply other clay obviously on the other side of this wing. So I'm just going to go ahead again, taking the back part of my spoon, and I'm just going to smooth over the edges. So then when it dries, it'll dry nice and even, and we won't have these raised areas over the edge. Alright, so I've got one wing. Interior or inside of one wing is all taken care of. I'm going to do the other one same exact way, obviously. I have my little bucket here, 2 buckets, because again, it's another nice sunny day outside where I live. I'm going to sit this out in the sun to dry. Because there's some wet, heavier clay on here, and there's not a whole lot of strip mache, I'm going to support this. You can use anything, piece of wood, anything like that. I'm using like here's scissors that I'm just kind of holding that up against the wing while I sit it outside so that this curved area on the wing won't relax so much. I'll still maintain that curved area. The other thing that I want to mention is that if you want any kind of texture in your wing, now's the time to put that in there. So if you can see, this is kind of how that's going to look. After this dries, what I'm going to do is something similar to this guy. I'm going to go ahead and put some small, like, veiny or bony structure using my clay. But I'm going to let this dry first before I do that. And then I'll come around the edge here on this as well after this dries. But if you do want any other kind of texture besides that in your wing, now's the time to press that in before it dries. Before I move on, if you are intending to give your bat some fangs or some little claws on his feet, now is the time to start creating those. So I'm just taking a little bit of my clay here. I'm going to hand form a couple of little teeth. Now you can also, if you have polymer clay, like Sculpey clay, oven baked clay, you can create those out of the Sculpey clay, and it will give it a different, obviously it'll give it a different texture. It'll be more smooth and more tooth-like instead of this paper mache clay. But you can certainly do your whole sculpture in with the paper mache clay, not a problem. So I've hand formed one little fang. And if you want your fang to dry kind of curved, what I suggest is getting a plastic bottle or jar or something like that, or a glass jar, and putting them on to that form, that plastic form, and it will dry with a slight curve to it. Something like that. So that's one way to make little fangs and little claws for the feet, if that's something that you want to put on your little bat. I'm probably going to end up doing mine out of polymer clay, but I just wanted to show you this little technique here. All right, we are moving right along. For this next portion of building the armature, you're going to need a couple of different things here. This is where we're going to attach our bat to our branch. I have 3 different sizes of branches, obviously. Here's a thinner one, a little bit thicker than that one, and then a much thicker one. Depending on the size of your bat that you've created, that's where you're going to choose the thickness of your branch, obviously. For instance, on this guy, he's a much larger bat than what this guy's going to be. So I don't need a branch that is going to be that thick. So for my smaller guy, I'm going to choose this size here. Right, so we have that. And then the next thing, a couple other items that you're going to need for this little portion of the tutorial here. You're going to need some corrugated cardboard, not super thick like the corrugated cardboard that I used to create the body. So you can tell the different thicknesses here, the difference here. This happens to be from a UPS shipping box. That's going to be good enough. The other items that you're going to need is some kind of a blade. You can even use scissors for this thickness of cardboard is going to be fine, because all we're going to do is cut a straight line in there. We're just going to cut down straight. There's not going to be any bends or anything for this section. So a blade or a pair of scissors, a marker to mark out your area for where you're going to cut. And then, as you can see, I have many different types of clamps here. These are some spring clamps that I have. You don't need to have these if you don't have any spring clamps. You can use large binder clips like this, or even clothespins. If your bat isn't so big, if this is a smaller bat like that, you can use clothespins. Because basically, you're going to need some kind of clamp or something to hold your pieces of cardboard in place while the hot glue is cooling. So on that note, make sure you have your hot glue gun fired up. Going back to the spring clamps, I got a whole set of these spring clamps here at my local hardware store for about $12. They're nothing fancy. But they're perfect for what I'm going to be using them for. Not for metal or wood or anything like that, but for holding down pieces of cardboard, they're going to be perfect for that. Alright, so basically what I want to do here, I'm going to take my bat, and if you picture it, obviously he's going to be hanging upside down like that. But for all intents and purposes, for now, position him right side up with your piece of branch underneath there. Don't want to have giant legs here or anything, so you're not going to need that much cardboard. So basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my piece of cardboard underneath here, put my piece of wood there, and I'm going to determine the length of the leg that I want. So I think probably around about right there. I'm going to take my marker and I'm going to mark that length from, let's say, I'm probably going to end up gluing from about right there. So I'm going to make a mark there. And then I'm going to make a mark here, down here, because that's where I know that basically that's where it's going to meet the branch. But we're going to curve this piece of cardboard over this branch. So we want to have a little bit more length to it. So I'm going to say, let's say, I'm going to go down to about right here. And we'll see how that goes. Now, the other thing, so this, we're just going to cut that off. We're not going to need that much. Ruler will help. It doesn't have to be exact or perfect. So we're going to cut there. I'm going to cut right about here. And I'm going to take my, back to my piece of wood here. And just about, I'm going to say just about the width of my piece of wood is about the width of what I want these pieces of cardboard to be for my armature. So I'm going to go ahead, try my best here to get two of them that are about the same size. Again, they don't have to be perfect. Sincerely hope this is making sense. I'm trying to explain this process the best way I can. But if you watch, you'll get the idea. I'm just cutting this piece of cardboard here. Get those pieces out of the way. These are going to be what's going to be connected to the branch and the back of my bat. All right, so I have my is going to serve as my little legs here that are going to be connected to the body of my bat, and then around my little branch here, going to be connected to the top of our bat. So with my hot glue, I'm going to go ahead and attach these two legs here, or what will be the two legs. It's easier if you do manipulate them a little bit. I should have bent this one. In fact, I'm going to take that off. Bend them first. Then attach. I think I want them angled out just a little bit. Something like that. And for good measure, to make sure that they're going to stay on there good for me while I'm manipulating the rest of this piece. Squirt some more glue on there. Let that cool, and then I'll go ahead and attach the legs to this branch. All right, these are secured in place. The front edge of the bottom portion of the bat body there with some hot glue. I did make sure I squirted a good amount of hot glue all the way around there to hold that in place. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and attach. This is where my spring clamps are going to come into play. Probably use this size here. Like I said, binder clips will work. Or you can go ahead and just hold them into place. If you're going to hold them into place with your hands while they cool, make sure you have a little cup of cold water, just in case of any accidents. So I'm going to take one at a time. I'm just going to go ahead. I hope you can see this. I'm curling the cardboard around my branch here. That's where I know about right there how much I'm going to need. So I'm going to, hope you can see this, squirting some hot glue in there. Curving it around with the hot glue. Sorry, I got to turn it here so I can see it. With my spring clamp, that's how I'm going to hold that in place while it dries. I'm going to do the same thing for the other side here. Squirting some hot glue on that, curving it around. I'm going to use my spring clamp again to hold that in place while it cools. Alright, I'm going to remove my spring clamps here. They have done their job very well. It's on there really good. Next and last thing that I'm probably going to do in this segment of this tutorial on building the armature is I want to strip mache these pieces of cardboard, because again, it needs, if this thing is going to be hanging upside down, this is going to need to be very strong. So I want to strip mache them. So I'm going to take the time to do that. I'm going to strip mache over where I glued on the pieces of cardboard to the body. Several pieces here. And then I'm going to strip mache these legs, or the pieces of cardboard that are eventually going to be the legs. Individually, of course, one at a time. Get a few good layers on there, because we're going to eventually sculpt right over this with our paper mache clay so that they actually look like legs and not these flat little pieces of cardboard attached to a tree branch. I'm going to do several layers. Make sure it's going to be nice and strong. Okay, I have several layers of strip mache over that cardboard there. Gonna have to let that dry completely, probably overnight, and it should be ready to go for sculpting. Not gonna hang it. I'm gonna let it dry flat. All right, guys, so that's gonna bring us to a stopping point on this section of building the armature for the tutorial. As you can see, we've gotten this far. Eventually, this is what this one's going to look like. The other bat is going to be a little bit different because this one's going to have cloth wings, and I have decided not to suspend this one from a branch. I'm going to suspend this one so that he looks like he's flying. So I'll show you how to do that in the next tutorial or next segment of this paper mache bat tutorial. Hopefully we'll be able to get through building the armatures and then move on to the sculpting phase after that. Thank you for sticking with me. If you have not already subscribed to our channel, please consider doing so. And the next one of this segment, next segment coming up very soon, we'll get right back to it, finish up these armatures, and continue on. So until next time, I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching.